Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point. My name's Ryan. Today I'm here with Shane, and today what we're doing is we are doing another Kill Team Faction deep dive. This time, talking all about the Harlequins, one of the top factions currently in the Kill Team tournament meta. Would you say so, Shane?
Yeah, I think as far as the compendium teams go, they're definitely one of the best ones.
There's no better place to get started than just by taking a look at the models themselves in this kill team and how this kill team is built up. So, in
Mhm.
order to build I guess we say Harlequins, but I guess to build a troop kill team, you need to have one player leader equipped with either a fusion pistol, a neuro disruptor, or shuriken pistol. You're never going to take the shuriken pistol on this model.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you can also take on the player leader a Harlequin's blade, caress, embrace, kiss, or a power weapon. You can take 7 other troop operatives selected from the following list, either player warriors equipped with Harlequin's blade, caress, embrace, or kiss, and a shuriken pistol. You can also take player gunners. So the player gunners can be outfitted with a fusion pistol or neuro disruptor, and once again, blade, caress, embrace, or kiss. And you can take up to 2 player gunner operatives.
So there's basically no reason not to take the gunners because again they get the melee weapon. They just additionally get the pistols,
Yeah, they're strictly better.
and the kill team, the fire team, I guess, gets access to seek and destroy, infiltration, and recon attack ops.
I guess we can take an aside here to talk about them. Which of these three do you think is the best for the troop kill team, or do you think it's really matchup dependent?
I think it's matchup dependent, but the one I'm not well, not just matchup dependent, but sometimes the board and the drop zones are going to affect it. But the one I take the most is recon. For Harlequins, recon is really doable because I think for most teams, recon is tough because you're doing a lot of complex actions. Like you need to go up on a building and do like a 2 APL action, or like you need to get to different parts of the board and do actions. Harlequins have the right combination of high APL and high movement to get to some of these things and achieve these secondaries, I think, pretty well. So that's been my favorite. Although I can see going seek and destroy against like a horde team where you're expecting to kill a lot of models, but yeah, it's dependent.
Yeah, so talking about their high APL and their high movement, looking at the data cards for the players here, 3 circle for movement, 3 APL, group activation 1, defense 3, 6 up save with 8 wounds, and they all have hollow suits, so they all have a 4 up invulnerable save. And then to further add on to their movement, they have flip belts. So each time this operative performs an action in which it moves as though it can fly and automatically passes jump tests. So
Yeah.
this is probably the probably the one faction in Kill Team with the highest mobility right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's other things with fly, like stealth suits can take fly, but those are only 2 APL.
Yeah.
Um, with 3 APL and fly, it can get pretty crazy the amount of stuff that you're able to do and move around the map and set up different opportunities for your kill team. And like I said with those recon tac ops, the reason that they're so good is because of the fly and the 3 APL together.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, so I guess taking a look at their armament here, I'm going to be looking at the player gunners specifically just because they have everything. The fusion pistol, a 4 attack weapon with 3 up ballistic skill, damage 5-3, range 3, AP 2, and mortal wounds 3. That right there seems like the way to go for most of these models, right?
Well, I think if you're against an elite team or a team that has like 10 wounds or more, then I would always go the fusion pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's even with 3 inch range. So, I mean, you've got a move and then a dash and then 3 inch range. So, you have a 12 inch threat range with that. But if you're using Rising Crescendo, one of their tac ops to improve their movement, you can up that range a little bit to like 14, I believe. 3-inch range really isn't a big it's not a big deal if you have fly and 3 APL, honestly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you're going to take that, but if you're against something with lower wounds, worse saves, more of a horde team, you might take disruptors, the neuro disruptors, which
Hmm.
are 4 attacks, 3 up ballistic skill, damage 4/5 with 6-inch range and AP 1 and stun. So you're not hitting as hard, but the extra 3 inches I think can go a long way, especially if you're shooting at something that probably is going to die to the disruptor anyway.
So looking at the shuriken pistol, which is just like the standard sidearm for these Harlequins, 4 attacks, hitting on threes, damage 3/4, range 6, and then rending. So that's something.
I, uh,
Um,
I there's an equipment piece we'll talk about later on, but I actually really like the shuriken pistols. I know like most of your 5 of your Harlequins are going to have these shuriken pistols, and it's still a pretty decent option against things with poor saves. And rending is just a really nice bonus, I think.
Taking a look now at their melee weapons, the blade gets 5 attacks, hits on threes, damage 4/5, and is balanced, so that free reroll is nice.
Mhm.
The caress is also 5 attacks, hitting on fours, damage 5/6. The embrace is 5 attacks, hitting on threes, 4/5, and brutal, so that's cool. Anytime I can take brutal on a weapon, that's typically what I'm taking. And then the kiss is 5 attacks, hitting on threes, damage 3/7.
So basically, I think knowing the situations in which you want to take different weapons is one of the biggest things about Harlequins.
Mm.
So all 4 of these weapons at a glance seem like they're pretty strong. My initial take, so I mean, I guess we can go. The first thing I want to do is compare the blade and the embrace because both of these are very similar. They both do damage 4/5. They both hit on threes. So initially, I was kind of leaning towards the embrace because of, like you said, brutal. So brutal, you can't parry a hit unless you have a crit. But I've actually started to lean towards preferring the blades, and the reason for that is because brutal. So the instances where your attacks are going to get parried is, say, like you only get 2 hits, right? Like in your let's say you're fighting a model and they've got 8 wounds or something, and 2 hits are going to kill them.
Hmm.
So and then you only get 2 hits. If you get more than 2 hits, then you're going to kill them no matter what, because you'll hit and then they'll see that you have 2 hits left and they'll know that parrying means they're just going to do no damage and die to the third hit.
Right.
But if you only get 2 hits, you'll hit them and then they'll parry you, and then that's it. For those situations, brutal's better. Basically, it means that they're not going to be able to get that parry unless they have a crit. But with 5 attacks, it's very rare that you're only going to get 2 hits. I've found that having 4 or 5 with balance, just having, because you're probably going to get 3 hits minimum anyway on math, and then you get a reroll on top of that. I think most of the time the blade is going to end up performing a little bit better. But there are some equipment pieces that actually make the embrace a little bit stronger that we can get into later. Looking at the caress is probably the one that I'm going to take the least. But I don't think it's totally useless. So obviously 5/6, it hits like a truck. But hitting on fours, I think, is a little bit of a problem here, even with 5 attacks. There's certain matchups where, like, say you're against Grey Knights or Deathwatch, something with 11 wounds,
Hmm.
where 5/6 is a really strong profile. And maybe you'd be willing to take caresses with a certain equipment piece to give you a free reroll once per game, just to kind of leverage the fact that your weapon skill is worse. A lot of the time, I'm gonna avoid the caress unless it's like the exact wound count that is necessary to get a kill.
Gotcha.
Um, and then there's the kiss, which I think has a pretty reasonable place in the roster just because of that crit damage of 7. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty strong. The problem is you're fishing for a crit. So if you're against something like novitiates with 7 wounds or guardsmen with 7 wounds, I think the kiss definitely has a place. With 5 attacks, there's a decent chance you're going to get a crit. But the problem is if you don't get a crit, suddenly you need 3 hits to kill a guardsman, even because of that damage 3 on the normal.
Yeah.
So that can be pretty weak. But there's an equipment piece that makes that damage 3 go to damage 4 and then you start suddenly considering that Harlequin's Kiss just a little bit more. And there's one other weapon that I guess we could
Yes.
talk about. The
Yeah.
leader gets a power weapon. The vast majority of the time, you're going to opt to take the power weapon on the leader. I think the only, and I've played a lot of Harlequins at this point, and I've never taken anything other than the power weapon, just because of hitting on twos, lethal 5, 4, 6 damage. I think maybe you can take a caress if you're against those matchups I talked about, like Grey Knights or like those 11 wound models, because unlike with the normal guys, he hits on threes with the caress. So it's a little bit more manageable. But most of the time, power weapon. And
Yeah.
then you give him a sick pistol. So
Yeah. Do we want to talk about their equipment now or go to ploys?
I think we should save the plays for last just because
Yeah.
I think the equipment kind of gives a lot of context to their weapons.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about like the melee weapon specific ones just to continue that conversation. So the first one on the list here is the accelerated monofilament wire for 3 equipment points. Select one Harlequin's Embrace the operative is equipped with. The weapon gains the Reap 1 critical hit rule and lethal 5-up special rule for the battle.
This takes the embrace to a slightly stronger area just because of lethal 5. I mean, Reap 1 is nice, but the real treat here is lethal 5.
Yeah, and it's brutal as well because that I mean
Mhm.
that just stays on. It doesn't get replaced. It stacks. So you have a
Yeah.
brutal 5-up. Yeah, it's just good.
Yeah. It is 3 equipment points, though, just like everything here. All the Harlequin equipment is 3 equipment
Oh
points.
yeah, I didn't even realize. Okay, yeah.
So, I this is strong, but I think it speaks to Harlequin's strengths that I don't even really take it that much because a lot of the time I don't feel like I need it, and I'd rather buff other things. Lethal 5, though, is really good, and if you don't feel like you need to really leverage your pistols at all, and you want to take embraces, then this is, I mean, always a good option to go for. But yeah, I mean, lethal 5, brutal, 5 attacks, 4, 5. That's a really strong weapon.
Yeah, so next up on the list here we have the super tensile monofilament wire. Select one Harlequin's Kiss the operative is equipped with. Add 1 to the weapon's normal damage characteristic for the battle. So pretty straightforward. That Kiss is going from a 3-7 to a 4-7. So I mean you're getting a little bit more consistency for 3 equipment points. I'm not really sure if this is worth the investment. What do you think?
I really like this. So this is a lot of the time when you take a kiss, like I mentioned earlier, there's always a risk when you fight with the kiss model because say you're fighting a guardsman where you have the upside of one-shotting it with the crit. If you don't get the crit, you need 3 hits to kill it, and that's just not acceptable.
Right.
But if you have the super tensile on, even if you don't get a crit, you're still killing them in 2 hits. So,
Gotcha.
I mean, the difference there is like 2 hits do 8 damage versus 2 hits do 6 damage. 2 hits doing 6 damage is just pretty awful in general. So a lot of the time, what I've done is I'll run like all embraces or all swords, but then 3 of my guys have kisses, and I'll give all my equipment points to those 3 models with the kisses.
Hmm.
So that way, the normal damage from the kisses is the same as the normal damage from the embrace, but I have 7 crit damage instead of 5.
Gotcha.
So that's the melee specific equipment pieces, but I think almost all of these are pretty good.
Yeah, they definitely are. So I guess I'll just go back to the start here. So the Shrieker Toxin rounds, once again, 3 equipment points. Select a Shuriken pistol. That weapon gains the Mortal Wounds 1 critical hit rule.
I kind of wrote this off at first
Yeah,
because it doesn't sound that good, but the more I've thought about it in recent days, the more I've actually really started to warm up on it. You're going to have your 2 gunners with the really strong pistols, and then your leader with a really strong pistol. So that's 3 of your guys with pretty good shooting.
yeah,
Giving the Shrieker Toxin rounds to 3 of your Shuriken guys in certain matchups can make it really so that you have like 6 pretty good shooting models. It's obviously it has the Mortal 1 critical hit rule. So this basically means that your pistol is now damage 3-5 instead of 3-4. But
yes.
what's nice about it is that it has rending. So if you get 1 crit, you turn another hit into a crit and you get 2 mortal
Ooh.
wounds right there.
Oh, okay, okay.
And because of the crit damage essentially being 5 now, it opens up I guess like a new avenue for you to kill like a 10 wound model or a 9 wound model with your shuriken pistols. Like 2 crits, if they get through, they're doing 10 damage with the shuriken pistol with the shrieker toxin round. So that's really good. And I think it actually might help them out in one of their toughest matchups, in my opinion, which is like orcs and commandos, which we'll talk more about their matchups later. But that's a pretty big thing, in my opinion. So not only do you have that I guess it just synergizes well with rending,
Yeah.
but it allows you to have 6 good pistol models instead of just the 3.
So the next equipment piece, you can only take one of these. It's a death mask. If the operative equipped with the death mask is killed at the end of the activation, you gain a command point.
Yeah, I really like this.
Is this an auto take, do you think, or do you think that it's more like a luxury?
I don't think they have any auto takes with their equipment. I think everything is pretty much there's a right situation for it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times your leader is one of your strongest models, and a lot of the time you're gonna want to run him in, and your opponent might be taking something like Headhunter. So I've really liked giving the death mask to my leader. So if they do kill my leader, I'm getting something for it, and he's probably going to be one of the models that I'm most aggressive with too. So I've really liked throwing a death mask on the leader
Yeah.
in certain games, and I've done it quite a few times. But unfortunately, you can only take one death mask, which is a shame. But I really like it just because Harlequins have some amazing ploys that make their CP more valuable. So just for that, death mask is something that I'll take a lot of the time.
So we already talked about the 2 different types of wires. Next, we have the pure psycho crystals. So select one neuro disruptor the operative is equipped with. The weapon gains the lethal 5-up special rule for the battle.
Yeah, lethal 5 is nice. And it lets them this weapon, remember, as stun. So now on a 5 you're stunning instead of a 6. I basically never take this. Like it is pretty decent, but the kinds of things that I'm going to take a neuro disruptor against, I don't really need to buff the neuro disruptor. Like it usually is already pretty much good enough with AP1 and damage 4/5.
Yeah.
I don't really ever see the need to buff it. But that's just me though. I mean, it is still good. It's just I think there's always better things to take, in my opinion.
Okay, okay. Next is the Wraithbone Talisman. Once per battle, when the operative is in combat, making a shooting attack, or a shooting attack is made against it, you can use the command reroll tactical play without spending any CP.
Yeah, this is it doesn't sound like a lot because it's just one reroll for free, but I've been taking this a lot. Specifically, I'll put it on the 2 gunners.
Oh yeah,
Um,
just so you can maximize their reliability, I guess, when they're actually shooting.
yeah, like you don't need to give it to the leader for his pistol or anything because he hits on 2s,
Yeah, with
but the
most
gunners,
everything.
yeah, the 2 gunners, they've got 4 shots hitting on 3s, and a lot of the time you just need 3 shots to go through, I think, to usually secure the kill
Mm.
for those weapons, especially a fusion with AP2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the Wraithbone Talisman is there just to make sure that those models don't whiff. Because there's one thing about Harlequins, and that's that they die very easily. It's hard to get the chance to kill them, but if you can fight them or shoot them, they do drop pretty easy. And if you whiff with a gunner, they're almost guaranteed to die right after. So I like taking the Wraithbone Talismans just to make sure that those guys don't whiff. And I did mention earlier that there's some instances where you can take the Harlequin's Caress melee weapon where you're hitting on 4s. And I think if you do that, I think it's a pretty good idea to give them the Wraithbone Talisman as well to kind of leverage that their melee just a
Yeah.
little bit better
Yeah.
and make up for that 4-up.
Makes sense. So lastly on the equipment list, we have the Prismatic Grenade. So I just want to say about grenades, I think grenades are, like, initially were pretty overlooked by a lot of people, but
Mhm.
recently, you know, the grenades are a great source of getting the indirect keyword. And it
Yeah.
is so good. I would say almost necessary if you want to make like deep tournament runs, and there's going to be teams there like Orc Commandos or Hive Fleets where they
Mhm.
can just where they're going to be set up in conceal like all the time, and against the Hive Fleets, you know, you just can't hit them unless you have an indirect weapon. Otherwise, they're
Yep.
going to jump all over you. So Grenades are very, very good, and no matter what faction you're running, you should take a look at your equipment and see if you have access to some good grenade weapons.
Yeah, and on top of it, it has obviously blast, and it is stronger than a frag grenade. So instead of 2-3, it's 3-4 with blast, which is pretty good. Indirect is nice, obviously, and it has stun, which I really like the prismatic grenade against. Say you're playing against gene stealers, or like you said, commandos. Not only is the indirect really good against them because they're always concealed, but stun is really good against them because they're 2 APL.
Yeah.
So yeah, prismatic grenades absolutely have a place, and with the move dash range, so like move dash shoot with a grenade that's 15 inches that you can threaten, or if you're using movement buff ploy, it's potentially 17 inches. So pretty crazy.
Would you typically take like just one prismatic grenade, or would you go for the full three on three separate operatives, or is there just like more nuance to it? What kind of equipment pieces are you typically taking when you play Harlequins?
If I am gonna run grenades, I'll probably run. It's a tough call. I think if I'm against like 10 gene stealers, I'll probably take three.
Yeah.
But if I'm against like gene stealers and warriors, maybe I'll go two prismatic grenades and then something else like a death mask or maybe like a wraithbone talisman on a gunner.
So that covers equipment, so I guess now we can get stuck in with their ploys here.
I guess we'll start with the strategic ploys. In my opinion, Harlequins have access to some of the best ploys in the game. So I mean, I guess we'll start with Rising Crescendo. This one is really good. It's probably of the three strategic ploys, it's the one you'll be using the least. But let's go over it. So 1 CP, basically until the end of the turning point, whenever you activate a troop operative, you can dash and charge even if you're within engagement range of enemy operatives. So this basically gives you a cheaper fallback, or you can just charge from model to model. And the big part, though, is when you perform a normal move, fallback, dash, or charge, you add 1 to the range of those activations. So now you have a 9-inch charge, you have a 7-inch movement, a 4-inch dash. So you combine that move and dash, and you're going 11 inches. Again, you can threaten even further with your pistols and grenades that way, or you can just, utilize that extra charge distance. There's a lot you can do with this.
Next up, we have Domino Field. So this is strategic play is infamous at this point for just being what a lot of people would call game breaking. So it's 1 CP, of course, until the end of the turning point, while a friendly troop operative that has not made a shooting attack during the turning point is within an inch of a terrain feature that provides cover. Enemy operatives always treated as having a conceal order regardless of any other rules, including vantage point. I presume this applies to the superior vantage point, I think is what it's called, from the new rules for Chelnath regarding terrain. Just a very, very powerful nope, you can't shoot me.
Yeah, I mean, against a team with shooting, turn 1, you can just pop Domino Field and you're safe. Even at a first glance, it's not as strong. It doesn't seem as strong as it actually is, because not only do you get it's kind of like a gene stealer where your conceal doesn't go away, but even if you have an engage order and you haven't shot with Domino Field up, if you're in cover, you're treated as having a conceal until you shoot.
Right.
So you can like set your gunners up and engage turn 1 and put them behind cover, and nothing can shoot them. Even stuff like if you're playing like Pathfinders or Tau, and you put 5 marker lights on a model, they're considered to be engaged instead of concealed. Domino Field says, regardless of any other rule. So even if your Harlequin has 5 marker lights on them, they're still concealed if they're in cover. Stuff like that. I mean, this is a fantastic ploy. Really hard to deal with for shooting teams. So definitely consider using this. It's pretty much, it's kind of like the like I know Grey Knights have a similar ploy, but for Grey Knights it goes away if the opponent's within 6 inches. For this, that doesn't even apply. It's just no matter what, unless they're within 2 inches, and then you're not even considered to be in cover. As long as you're hiding behind something, even if they see you, they can't shoot you.
Yeah.
So that's really good. And these guys, like I said earlier, they die easily. So you want to keep them safe as much as possible.
Yeah. Next up here, we have Prismatic Blur. Until the end of the turning point, each time a friendly troop operative performs a normal move, fallback, or charge action, it is a Prismatic Blur. While it is a Prismatic Blur, Each time a shooting attack is made against that operative, you can reroll one of your defense dice, and each time it fights in combat, each time your opponent strikes you with a normal hit, you roll a d6, and on a 4-up, you treat that strike as a parry instead. I mean, it's just good. I don't know
Yeah.
what to say. You get I want to say a free reroll defense dice, but it increases your survivability by a lot.
Activating Prismatic Blur, and then like in situations where you're about to charge, like maybe like turn 3 or 4, once you're up close and you don't need to like, you're not far away and only threatened by shooting. You activate Prismatic Blur, you charge, you fight, and then every time they hit you on a 4-up, they don't even get to hit you. They just parry,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, that's so annoying to deal with. It's not quite as good as the Drakari version, where for Drakari they pop this and then the witches just get the 4-up, like when you fight them. For Blur, you need to activate the model first. So if your opponent is attacking or shooting a ready model that hasn't been activated, then they don't get the Prismatic Blur buffs. But still, really strong.
Yeah. So moving now into the tactical ploys, we have Murderous Entrance. Use this tactical ploy in the resolved successful hit steps of a combat after the friendly troop operative that performed a charge action during this activation strikes with a critical hit. You can immediately select one of your remaining attack dice and strike with it. So it's like, so you strike, and then it doesn't go over to your opponent if your model charged. You get to immediately strike again with another dice, right?
Yep. So basically, you can hit something for like 9 to an upside of like 14 damage.
Yeah,
If
depending on
like
the
say
weapon.
yeah, before your opponent even gets to hit you with anything. So
That is so good in Melee. Because, like, every other faction, it doesn't matter what you're up against. If you're going to charge a model, you have to expect to take some type of damage.
but for Harlequins, and it's crucial to not take damage as often as possible. So
Yeah.
something like this is just huge. And something I just want to talk about really quick that we didn't mention about Domino Field is that your Domino Field stays up or it goes away if you shoot, but if you fight, it stays up. So let's say you charge something, and then you just kill it with Murderous Entrance, but you make sure that you're in cover after the model dies, then you're still in Domino Field. You still can't get shot, even though you just charged and killed something without even getting hit back. So there's a lot of ways that you can keep yourself safe with this team,
Oh,
and I think Murderous
jeez.
Entrance is just another tool.
Yeah. Next up for the tactical ploys, we have the Curtain Falls for 1 CP. Use this tactical ploy in the resolve successful hit steps of combat after an active friendly troop operative strikes. Immediately end that combat, and that friendly operative can perform a fallback action for 1 AP, even if it has performed an action during that activation that prevents it from performing a fallback action. How many times did I say action and activation in that? Yeah, so how do you feel about this? I mean, I can see this being an instance of you charge in, just punch something once, hopefully it dies, and then you just get out of there. When do you typically use this?
Well, if it dies, you don't need to because it's But if well, I guess even if it dies, you can still spend the CP for a fallback. But what I was thinking is this is kind of like an emergency button. Like say you charge something, you're not going to whiff often with 5 attacks on 3s. Let's say you charge and you get like 1 hit and 4 misses,
Mm-hmm.
and your opponent is totally going to kill you if you keep that going. This is the situation where you hit them and then run away.
Yeah, you
End the
just dip.
combat. Don't let them hit you.
Yeah. So this one is just this is just like, why does this team get this? Hero's Path. Use this tactical ploy when a friendly troop operative is activated. Until the end of its activation, it can perform the following action: Hero's Path for 3 action points. Move this operative anywhere in the kill zone that is more than 6 inches from enemy operatives.
Yeah.
So you just get you can teleport for 1 command point.
Yeah. I mean I never use this because it's 3 APL, but there's definitely use for it. I mean, you can sneaky grab like a tac op, or
Yeah.
like say you're taking infiltration or something and you have interloper, like save this for the last activation and then teleport to your opponent's board edge, and then next turn you just run away.
Yeah.
Especially if you can use Hero's Path to get to a spot that you can't be seen. That's really useful. Maybe you just want to prevent like a hold the line or something. You can do some really cheeky plays with Hero's Path, and I think it's very situational, but I think you'll use it probably at some point in a tournament if you're running Harlequins.
Yeah, it feels like this is something you use where you already know that you're gonna win the game, but you just want to like maximize your tac ops points.
Yeah, I mean it's there's some funny stuff you can do with Hero's Path. I'm a fan. I honestly, that's all their tactical and strategic plays, and I don't think they have a bad one. I think every
They
one of these
don't.
has a yeah, they all have play. Um, and so that means you're going to be using a lot of CP with Harlequins, which I think makes something like Death Mask equipment just a little bit stronger. Just
Hmm.
getting that extra CP if an important model dies. And the upside of or the downside of that means like this important model isn't dying, which I mean that's a good thing in and of itself. So the Death Mask is always really helpful. These ploys are amazing.
Yeah, they're solid. I guess, do you want to talk about matchups here? Like what they're, I mean, the strengths of this team are fairly obvious. They're fast moving, they're deadly in close combat. They do have great shooting, which pairs off of their movement. But what are some of their weaknesses, Shane? How do we beat Harlequins?
I would say, well, for starters, the big thing you want is grenades. So you would expect them to be running domino field turn one a lot of the time. So here's kind of the paradox of Harlequins. So if you're playing against them, you're and you know what to expect. You might not want to take any shooting, right? Because you know they're just going to pop domino field and never get shot. But if you don't take shooting, then they're just not going to they're not going to use domino field, and they have the extra CP to do other things. Because of that, you kind of still do want to take some shooting just to like keep them honest and force them to spend that CP. So, in my opinion, take a little bit of shooting if you can, like if depending on what your team is, force them to run that domino field. And if you have access to grenades, like frag grenades, or even I would, it depends on the options. Like frag grenades are pretty good. I would probably go 2 frags, 2 cracks against Harlequins, and just use ways to find ways like with indirect to get around domino field.
Yeah.
So obviously with indirect, it treats them as not having cover. So the engage conceal order doesn't really matter at that point. So you still get to shoot them. Beyond that, though, Harlequins definitely are really good in some matchups, and there's other matchups where the it gets a little bit more interesting. So I think that against elite teams, I don't think there's a better team that you can play than Harlequins if you're facing elite teams. It's very easy, I would say, if you're playing against like Marines or even Custodes. You just go 3 fusions and you pop domino field to keep safe. And I mean, if you're playing it right, like against Marines, for instance, every time you use a fusion, you probably should be killing a Marine. But against Custodes, I think Harlequins probably have the best matchup against 4 Custodes, even pre nerf. I thought that they had a pretty good matchup against them. So I really like that. Um, but they have a few bad matchups. And I mentioned earlier, Commandos, that's a really tough one for them for a few reasons. For starters, you don't have anything outside of the Caress, which hits on fours, and the Kiss, which really relies on crits. You don't have anything that can easily do 10 damage in melee, which is the wound count for an orc. So
Yeah.
most of the time, you really like the blade or the embrace, but crit hit, that does 9 damage, and that's not going to cut it. And even if you do, say you're running a Kiss, even if you do get the crit, they can use Just a Scratch and ignore 7 damage. So that matchup, I think, is pretty difficult, on top of the fact that they have stuff like Dynamite, which is really good against Harlequins. And even Greenskins can take 5 stick bombs, which are damage 2-4, which is a pretty good profile against Harlequins.
Yeah.
So that's a really tough matchup. I mean, I don't think it's impossible for Harlequins, but it's definitely the hardest matchup for them. I said they're really good against elite teams, but I also think they're really good against like shooty hordes, like Vet Guard or like Imperial Guard, something like that. because again, their whole strength is shooting, and you can just sit there and domino field and keep yourself safe. So that's a really good matchup for them. I think they do okay into Tau too for the same reason. But again, just make sure you're looking out for those grenades because if they're playing it right, they're going to take a bunch of grenades and they're going to make your life hard.
So you had the opportunity to play against the new Sisters Kill team, the Sisters Novitiates, playing as Harlequins. How do you think they play against that kill team? And then how do you think they would play against the new Pathfinder kill team out of the Chelnath box?
I think that it's tricky. Well, against the novitiates, it was the one when I did play against them. It was the player's first time running them, and it was my first time playing against them. So mistakes were made on both sides. But I really like taking a few kisses, and just if you get the crit, you're one-shotting them, which is a pretty big deal. And even though they're only 7 wounds and they've got 4 up saves, you might be tempted to take the neuro disruptor, which is like maybe your first instinct, but I think it's actually better to take the fusion because the thing about the novitiates is they get all these free rerolls with their faith points.
Yeah.
So AP1 might not actually be enough to cut it if they're like basically guaranteeing they're going to make 2 saves. The best way to avoid that is to take the fusion and just not give them more than a single save. And then if you get 3 hits, they just die for sure. So I liked doing that, taking Harlequin's Kisses just for the upside of one-shotting, and then filling the rest out with blades or embraces. And as far as the Pathfinders go, they have some of the craziest grenades I've seen, which definitely is going to be a problem for Harlequins. But if you can just be very cognizant of which models have grenades, pay attention to the Grenadier, and just keep Domino Field up as much as possible, outside of the grenades, they should never be able to shoot you. And they're only going to have 3 models carrying grenades at a time, unless they take the I forget what the EMP grenade, but that one's
Right.
not amazing against you.
Yeah.
It's those fusion grenades that are really scary. And if you can just single out those models, try to kill them, and just stay in conceal as much as possible with Domino Field, I think it's a winnable matchup for Harlequins, but definitely not an easy one.
Do you have anything else regarding Harlequins that you want to cover?
I don't really know. I mean, I think that this is probably one of the strongest teams in the game right now. They definitely fall victim to 1 or 2 really bad matchups, like I mentioned, but there's certain things where if you're playing against Marines, I don't even know how you lose with Harlequins if you're
Yeah.
doing the right things.
Yeah.
They are extremely powerful. They have a pretty good skill ceiling too, so I think you can really go far with them in tournaments. Yeah, I think they're one of the best teams in the game, possibly the best team in the compendium at the moment after the Talon nerfs. So
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this Kill Team Faction deep dive. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. And come over and join us on Discord and continue the conversation there. If you like what we're doing and you want more of what we're doing, go ahead and check out our Patreon where you can get early access to our videos and stuff like that. Thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you again in the next one.